Alright, now that we know how to do vector plot graphs, let's apply it to the factor loadings of table 4.3. As you can see here, I've drawn a beautifully perfect circle and have factor 1 on the x-axis and factor 2 on the y-axis. Now, I'm not the best, but I'm going to attempt to take what we have in table 4.3 and take those values and show the vectors of each of the cognitive tasks on this graph here. So let's take olfactory first. If you recall, olfactory had a correlation coefficient of 0.40 on factor 1 and 0.74 on factor 2. So we can go 0.40, which is about here, and up 0.74, which I'll say is about here. And we can draw a vector like this. So this coming down here is 0.74, and going across here is 0.40. Okay, the next cognitive task that we had was wind shift with 0.31 on factor 1 and negative 0.74 on factor 2. So we can go 0.31 and down 0.74. And of course, since I'm doing this by hand, it's not completely accurate, but doing my best. Okay, the next one is detour with 0.81 on factor 1 and 0.19 on factor 2. So, because the radius is 1, let's go out 0.81 and up 0.19. I think that's what I said, right? Yeah. So it'll be about here. So this is 0.19. And going across, this is 0.81. So we can create a vector that looks like that. Okay, cognitive task number 3 is fear with negative 0.71 on factor 1 and 0.29 on factor 2. So we can go back 0.71 and up 0.29. So this is negative 0.71 and up 0.29. Okay, and we have one more, which is operant with 0.06 on factor 1 and negative 0.25 on factor 2. So this is going to be really small. So we can go out 0.06, I'm just going to guess it's right about here, and go down 0.25. So negative 0.25, and this is 0.06. So it's going to create a small vector right here. So we just did the vector plot graph for the factor loadings. Let's talk about this a little bit. This graph shows clearly that factor 1 is defined primarily by the detour task on the right. I should probably label these, shouldn't I? I'll go ahead and do that. This is detour. This one was olfactory. We have wind shift down here. The small one is operant, and then we have fear. So looking at it at factor 1, it's defined on the right by detour and on the left by fear. So we can say this is the detour versus fear factor. The detour task involves, in this practical case, it involves blocking blocking the mice from reaching a small collection of mouse toys, a kind of mouse playground, and the fear task involves avoiding foot shock. So the structural organization of this first factor is telling us that the two are inversely related. So play-motivated cognitive skill versus fear-motivated cognitive skill. That is, the kind of mice that do well in getting toys tend not to do well in avoiding foot shock, and vice versa. So I hope that makes sense. If you do well on this one, you tend not to do well on this one. The second factor, right here, we can see is primarily defined by olfactory versus wind shift. So olfactory on the positive loading and wind shift at the bottom, the negative loading. The olfactory task involves the attraction of hungry mice to chocolate, nutmeg, and cinnamon smells, and the wind shift task involves water escape. So how can we interpret this? Well, factor 2, therefore, also involves an approach task on one end and avoidance task on the other. So you can also say it's sensory hedonism versus water aversion, as it talks about in your text. So maybe to explain this a little more simply, the mice that do well on this olfactory task, so that are attracted, like these hungry mice that are attracted to chocolate and other certain smells, tend to do bad at avoiding water or escaping from water. So we can see by looking at this vector plot graph, just visually, we can get some insight into the underlying latent structure of cognitive skills and motivation in mice. So I hope this video was good to help you see how vector plot graphs really help us get a visual of what's going on between the factors and how you can define factors. You can easily see here detour versus fear, olfactory, and wind shift, and operant really doesn't play a good role in either of these factors. But I hope you enjoyed this, and you have a great day.